The stark contrast was almost a physical blow, a silent scream against the glass and steel modernity that towered around her. A young woman, barely out of her teens, stood dwarfed by the gleaming corporate skyscraper, its polished facade reflecting the unforgiving midday sun. In one hand, clutched tightly against her threadbare coat, was a worn, crinkled plastic grocery bag. It bore the faded logo of a discount supermarket, an absurdly out-of-place emblem amidst the designer briefcases and tailored suits that whisked past her on the bustling city sidewalk. Her eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and fierce determination, scanned the intimidating entrance, a beacon of unreachable opportunity. What was her story? What unyielding force had propelled her here, to the very doorstep of such formidable power, armed with nothing but a plastic bag and an undeniable will? This was Sarah, and her journey was a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to be defined by their circumstances. In her early 20s, Sarah possessed an intellect that sparkled even in the dim light of her tiny, struggling rural American town. She had just graduated from the local community college with honors, her academic achievements a bright spot in an otherwise bleak landscape. But accolades, she quickly learned, did not translate into opportunity in a place where jobs were as scarce as rain in a drought. Her family, a tight-knit unit battered by years of economic hardship, looked to her with a hope that was both a comfort and an immense burden. Her mother worked 2 minimum-wage jobs. Her father struggled with a chronic illness that kept him from steady employment, and her younger siblings, bright-eyed and innocent, harbored dreams that Sarah desperately wanted to fulfill. She carried their collective weight, a silent promise to break the cycle of poverty that had gripped their lineage for generations. The email had arrived 3 weeks prior, a shimmering mirage in her inbox, threatening to shatter the fragile peace she had painstakingly built amidst her anxieties. It was an invitation for an interview. Not just any interview, but for a junior analyst position at Innovate Global, a prestigious high-tech behemoth nestled in the heart of a major U.S. metropolis, hundreds of miles away from her forgotten town. This wasn't just a job. It was the job, a dream she hadn't dared to vocalize, a chance to apply the theories she'd only ever read about in textbooks. The irony, however, was a cruel twist of fate. The very opportunity that promised to lift her out of her predicament was utterly out of reach due to her predicament. She stared at the logistics, the prohibitive cost of a train ticket, the impossibility of affording a bus, the daunting thought of securing appropriate interview attire when her entire wardrobe consisted of hand-me-downs and thrift store finds. Her heart, which had soared with initial euphoria, now sank under the crushing weight of reality. Days bled into weeks, each passing moment a tick-tock countdown to the rapidly approaching interview date. Sarah scoured her meager savings, a pathetic sum accumulated from babysitting and odd jobs, and found it laughably inadequate. She tried to borrow from neighbors, but everyone in their small community was fighting their own battles, their generosity limited by their own dire circumstances. The few friends she still maintained were equally strapped, offering only heartfelt apologies and shared despair. She looked at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, seeing not a sharp, promising graduate, but a girl trapped, her potential stifled by invisible chains of poverty. The polished corporate world of Innovate Global felt like another planet, one she could only observe from a desperate distance. How could she possibly bridge that chasm? The desperation grew into a gnawing ache, a constant companion that stole her sleep and dulled her appetite. Every solution she considered seemed to unravel before her eyes. The internet, her primary connection to the outside world, became a source of both aspiration and torment. showing her images of perfectly coiffed professionals and sleek office environments that mocked her humble reality. The dream job, once a beacon of hope, now felt like a cruel taunt. Yet, deep within her, a stubborn ember of defiance refused to be extinguished. She had worked too hard, dreamt too deeply, to surrender without a fight. This journey, this impossible interview, was not just about her. It was about her family, about every young person from a forgotten town who dared to dream beyond their postcode. This is a story about breaking barriers, about the incredible resilience of the human spirit, and about how sometimes the most profound judgments are made not on appearance, but on the fire that burns within. If you're finding yourself captivated by Sarah's struggle and her extraordinary courage, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories like hers to light, tales of triumph against adversity that remind us of what truly matters. Sarah's story is just beginning, and the path ahead is fraught with even greater challenges. Her plastic bag, a silent symbol of her poverty, was about to become something far, far more significant. She was about to enter a world utterly alien to her, holding on to her last shred of hope, carried carefully inside that flimsy plastic sack. The city awaited, and with it, the defining moment of her young life. Sarah's worn shoes scuffed against the dusty floorboards of her family's small, creaking farmhouse. The invitation, now creased from being read and reread, lay on the scarred kitchen table, a beacon of impossible hope. It wasn't just an interview. It was a lifeline, a chance to pull her family out of the suffocating grip of poverty that had defined their lives for generations. But the city, with its glittering skyscrapers and bustling streets, felt a universe away. The practicalities of getting there loomed like an insurmountable mountain range. Her mind raced, a frantic search through mental Rolodexes of favors and potential lenders. Her mother's medical bills, her father's failing machinery, the seemingly endless cycle of repairs and debts. Everyone in their small, struggling community was in the same boat, barely treading water. There was no one to borrow from, no hidden stash of cash for a spontaneous, life-altering trip. She tried appealing to a distant aunt, a kind woman but equally strapped for resources, who could only offer heartfelt apologies and a wistful sigh. The local credit union, always quick to lend for farming equipment or essential home repairs, scoffed politely at the notion of a loan for interview travel. It wasn't an investment in tangible assets, but in a fleeting dream. Sarah understood their logic, but it stung nonetheless. Her ambition, so clear and potent in her own mind, seemed foolish and impractical to the outside world. Then there was the clothing. The invitation clearly stated, "Business professional." Her meager wardrobe consisted of faded jeans, hand-me-down sweaters, and a single, well-preserved dress she wore to church on special occasions. It was a simple floral pattern, wholly unsuitable for the corporate environment she envisioned. She spent hours in front of their cracked bedroom mirror, holding up various combinations, each one feeling more ridiculous than the last. She tried dyeing a plain white blouse with tea bags, hoping for an antique ivory shade, but it came out a blotchy, unappealing beige. She attempted to mend a small tear in the sole of her best, albeit still worn, pair of sensible heels. But the repair was fragile and obvious. The despair began to creep in, a cold, insidious fog threatening to extinguish the tiny flame of hope. The journey itself became the next, most formidable antagonist. The online search for bus tickets revealed prices that were exorbitant, easily consuming what little emergency fund her mother had carefully hoarded for an unforeseen medical expense. A single round-trip ticket would be a devastating blow to their already precariously balanced finances. And the journey wasn't just expensive. It was long, arduous, a testament to the vast social and economic divide that separated her rural existence from the urban centers of opportunity. Sleeper trains were mythical luxuries. Greyhound buses, the only viable option, promised an overnight trek, multiple transfers, and hours of uncomfortable, sleepless travel. The prospect of arriving disheveled and exhausted, then immediately needing to project an image of confident professionalism, felt utterly impossible. Meanwhile, she pictured the man she would be interviewing with, Mr. Thompson. The internet offered a wealth of information about him, a true titan of industry, a self-made millionaire known for his ruthless efficiency, uncompromising standards, and almost supernatural business acumen. He built his empire from nothing, but the stories of his early struggles were always overshadowed by his immense, undeniable success. He was a man who valued precision, results, and an almost intimidating level of competence. The thought of facing him, a young woman from a forgotten town, with patched shoes and a hastily repurposed outfit, sent shivers down her spine. He embodied the almost insurmountable obstacle she had to overcome. As the interview date loomed closer, a quiet determination hardened within Sarah. Desperation gave way to a steely resolve. She couldn't afford to fail, not when so much was riding on this. She pulled out the best of her unsuitable clothes, a simple dark skirt, carefully ironed and free of any visible stains or tears, and a somewhat dated, but impeccably clean, white button-down shirt that had once belonged to her grandfather. It was far from ideal, but it was the best she had. To protect this precious, almost ceremonial outfit during the long journey, she wrapped it meticulously in tissue paper and placed it carefully inside a sturdy, albeit humble, plastic grocery bag. This wasn't just any bag. It was a symbol of her humility, her lack of resources, and her absolute refusal to be deterred by them. It was a testament to her resourcefulness and her single-minded focus on the opportunity, not the superficial trappings of success. She borrowed a $20 bill from her mother, a sum that represented days of careful budgeting, explaining it was for incidentals. Her mother, seeing the unwavering resolve in her daughter's eyes, simply nodded, a silent blessing and a silent prayer for her success. With her plastic bag clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah boarded the late-night bus. The journey was every bit as grueling as she had anticipated. The seats were hard, the air stale, and sleep was a fitful, elusive dream. She huddled in her seat, clutching her plastic bag like a precious artifact, her mind alight with a fierce, unwavering hope. Each bump in the road, each slow, groaning turn of the bus, brought her closer to a crossroads she knew would define her future, and the future of her struggling family. She was exhausted, but her spirit remained unbroken, fueled by the sheer weight of her ambition and the silent prayers of a small town counting on her. The gleaming automated doors of Thomson Global's towering headquarters hissed open, swallowing Sarah whole, a tiny, disheveled figure against the backdrop of polished marble and soaring glass. She clutched her plastic bag tighter, the thin plastic crinkling like a nervous whisper in the cavernous, hushed lobby. The air, conditioned to a perfect climate, felt impossibly thick, scented with expensive cleaning products and the faint, metallic tang of ambition. Her journey had been brutal, a sleepless blur of bus changes and hurried, cheap meals, each kilometer deepening the lines of fatigue around her eyes. Yet, a fierce tremor of triumph ran through her veins. She had made it. Her eyes, weary but sharp, swept across the reception area, a vision of understated luxury. Plush, minimalist seating arrangements dotted the space, occupied by individuals who seemed to have been born into tailored suits and effortless confidence. They exuded success, their movements fluid and unhurried, their briefcases gleaming, their smiles practiced and polite. Sarah felt the immediate visceral contrast between their pristine composure and her own rumpled reality. Her hair, though neatly brushed, still bore the faint impression of the bus seat she'd leaned against. Her shoes, her best pair, were scuffed from the long walk from the nearest subway station. A young woman, impeccably dressed in a charcoal pantsuit, glanced up from her tablet, her gaze briefly snagging on Sarah's plastic bag. A flicker of something unreadable, perhaps curiosity, perhaps mild disdain, crossed her features before she smoothly returned her attention to the screen. Another candidate, a man with perfectly coiffed hair and a knowing smirk, openly stared, a silent question hanging in the air. What is she doing here? Sarah felt the heat rise in her cheeks, a familiar flush of embarrassment, but she refused to drop her gaze. She met their stares with a quiet, unyielding defiance. She had earned her place here, at least for this interview. Eventually, a receptionist, whose smile was as polished as the floor, directed Sarah to the interview floor. The elevator ride was long, the silence punctuated only by the soft hum of the machinery. Each floor clicked by, a silent ascent into a world she scarcely knew. When the doors opened, she found herself in a hushed corridor, lined with more abstract art and subtle lighting. A sign pointed towards a waiting room, and with a deep breath, Sarah pushed open the heavy, frosted glass door. Inside, the atmosphere was a microcosm of the lobby. Several other candidates sat poised, their resumes clutched in manicured hands, occasionally exchanging low, confident whispers. The tension in the room was almost tangible, a silent competition playing out in every subtle gesture. Sarah found an empty chair in a corner, pulling her plastic bag onto her lap, a protective shield. She focused on steadying her breathing, trying to calm the frantic beat of her heart. She rehearsed her answers, recalling every detail of the company's mission statement, every project detail she had painstakingly memorized. Minutes stretched into an eternity. One by one, names were called, and candidates disappeared behind a door, only to re-emerge later, their expressions ranging from hopeful to resigned. Finally, a woman with kind eyes and a warm but professional demeanor emerged. "Sarah Miller?" she asked, a gentle smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes when they registered the plastic bag. This was the HR manager, and even her politeness couldn't entirely mask the faint surprise at Sarah's appearance. "Yes, that's me," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She rose, the plastic bag still resolutely in her grasp. The HR manager led her down a short hallway, past closed office doors, the faint murmur of distant conversations the only sound. Sarah's mind raced, anticipating the barrage of questions, steeling herself against the inevitable judgment. She knew she was an anomaly, a wild card in this meticulously curated corporate deck. They stopped at a grand wooden door, much larger and more imposing than the others. The HR manager offered a final quick smile. "Mr. Thompson is expecting you. Good luck, Sarah." With a gentle push, the door swung inward, revealing a spacious, impeccably organized office. The room was bathed in natural light from a panoramic window that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, a sprawling tapestry of steel and glass that seemed to stretch into infinity. Behind a large, dark wood desk sat a man who radiated authority and intelligence. "Mr. Thompson," He was older than she expected, with shrewd, piercing eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His posture was commanding, his silver hair neatly combed back, and his expensive suit seemed to melt seamlessly into his frame. He looked up from a document as she entered, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Sarah stepped forward, taking a deep breath, her plastic bag still clutched in her hand. It felt impossibly large now, a glaring beacon of her circumstances, amplifying her vulnerability in the face of such formidable power. The air in the room was thick with unspoken assumptions, a silent question about her presence, her appearance, and the unexpected item she carried. Mr. Thompson's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, his expression unreadable as he focused on the plastic bag. The moment of truth had truly arrived. Mr. Thompson's gaze lingered on the plastic bag for a fraction of a second longer than Sarah expected, a silent acknowledgement of its incongruity within the pristine surroundings. Yet, surprisingly, there was no flicker of disdain, no overt judgment in his sharp blue eyes. Instead, a subtle curiosity seemed to replace his initial, almost imperceptible, narrowing of the brows. He wasn't a man given to immediate reactions. His was a mind that processed, analyzed, and only then, perhaps, formed a conclusion. Sarah, despite her churning nerves, sensed this. He gestured towards the chair opposite his desk, a gesture devoid of warmth but also lacking any discernible frostiness. "Please have a seat, Ms. Miller," he said, his voice a low, resonant baritone that filled the spacious office. She sat, carefully placing the plastic bag on the floor beside her chair, trying to make it as inconspicuous as possible, though she knew it was a futile endeavor. The silence that followed felt immense, the kind that forces one to confront every insecurity. He didn't immediately launch into the typical icebreakers or resume-based questions. Instead, he leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful, almost contemplative. His eyes, though intense, seemed to be looking beyond her immediate appearance, searching for something deeper. "Ms. Miller," he began, finally breaking the silence, "your application was unique. Your academic record is exceptional, especially given the context of your educational institution. However, I'm less interested in what's written on paper today. Tell me about your journey here. Not the professional one, but the literal one." Sarah blinked, surprised by the unexpected opening. This wasn't a question about her skills or experience, but about her life. She took a steadying breath, choosing her words carefully. "It was challenging, Mr. Thompson. I live in a rural town, quite a distance from the city. Funds are scarce, so I opted for the most economical travel options. It involved several bus transfers and an overnight wait in a station. My family assisted with what little they could spare for the ticket." She recounted the grueling hours, the discomfort, the gnawing anxiety, but focused on the practicalities rather than indulging in self-pity. She wasn't looking for sympathy, but to convey the reality of her situation and the effort involved. He listened, every nuance of her voice, every subtle shift in her posture, seemingly analyzed. He didn't interrupt, his gaze unblinking. "And this outfit, Ms. Miller?" he asked, not unkindly, but directly, nodding towards her modest, carefully presented clothes. "No offense intended, but it's not typical for an interview at a firm like ours." Why the plastic bag? This was it, she thought. The moment of truth, the direct confrontation with her disadvantage. Yet, there was no derision in his tone, only an almost academic interest. "Mr. Thompson," she began, her voice gaining strength. "This is the only presentable outfit I own. It's clean, and I believe it's appropriate. The plastic bag. It was to keep it that way. I couldn't afford a suitcase, and I couldn't risk it getting soiled or wrinkled during the journey. My focus was entirely on getting here, on being prepared for this opportunity, not on the superficial aspects of my attire. She spoke with a quiet dignity, not defiance, but an assertion of her priorities. He nodded slowly, absorbing her explanation. "Resourceful," he murmured almost to himself. Then he leaned forward, his elbows resting on the polished desk. "Tell me about a time you faced an insurmountable obstacle, something that seemed utterly impossible to overcome. And tell me how you approached it, what your thought process was, and what the final outcome taught you." This was a character test, a probe into her problem-solving skills under duress and her inherent resilience. Sarah didn't hesitate. She spoke of her younger sister's unexpected medical emergency, a situation that had plunged her family into deep debt and threatened their home. She recounted how she had meticulously researched government aid programs, organized a community fundraiser, and worked multiple odd jobs, cleaning houses, tutoring, working shifts at the local diner, all while maintaining her demanding academic schedule. She described the emotional toll, the sleepless nights, the moments of despair, but emphasized her unwavering commitment to finding solutions. "The outcome," she concluded, "was that we managed to cover the medical costs, and my sister recovered. It taught me that persistence, even when hope feels distant, is the most powerful tool you possess, and that every problem, no matter how large, can be broken down into smaller, manageable steps." Her narrative was devoid of embellishment, a raw, honest account of struggle and triumph. She didn't depict herself as a hero, but as someone who simply refused to give up, who saw a need and found a way. Mr. Thompson listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. He asked follow-up questions, probing deeper into her decision-making process, her emotional state during that period, and the lessons she carried forward. Each answer Sarah gave was thoughtful, articulate, and deeply personal, revealing a young woman forged in the crucible of hardship, possessing an inner strength that few others could claim. He seemed less interested in her resume and more in the fabric of her being, the very essence of who she was beyond the credentials. The weight of the world, she explained with quiet conviction, had taught her an unparalleled sense of urgency and the importance of seizing every opportunity, qualities she believed were essential for success in any endeavor, especially in a demanding corporate environment. Mr. Thompson's gaze lingered on the modest plastic bag for a heartbeat too long, a silent acknowledgement of its stark contrast to the luxurious surroundings. Yet, it was not disdain that flickered in his eyes, but a profound, almost analytical curiosity. He gestured towards a comfortable leather chair opposite his desk, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that commanded attention without effort. "Please, have a seat, Miss Miller." Sarah's grip on the bag tightened momentarily before she eased into the chair, carefully placing the bag beside her feet. She met his intense stare directly, refusing to flinch, her own determination reflecting in her eyes. He leaned back, his fingers steepled, observing her for another long moment before speaking again. "Your resume, while impressive academically, doesn't quite explain this." He gestured subtly, encompassing her presence, her journey, and the silent narrative held within the plastic bag. "Why us, Miss Miller? With your grades, one would imagine opportunities elsewhere, perhaps closer to home, with fewer logistical challenges." His words were not unkind, but direct, probing for the underlying truth. Sarah took a deep breath, her mind instantly recalling the late nights spent poring over every detail of Thompson Innovations' groundbreaking work. Mr. Thompson, I chose Thompson Innovations precisely because of its reputation for pushing boundaries, for seeing potential where others see only obstacles. I believe in the transformative power of your mission, your dedication to sustainable technology, and your commitment to innovation that genuinely improves lives. Her voice gained strength with each word, infused with genuine passion. I've followed your work for years, not just the financial reports, but the impact stories, the way your company has redefined what's possible. My humble origins have, if anything, amplified my appreciation for real solutions, for advancements that aren't just profit-driven, but purpose-driven. She spoke about the challenges of her community, the lack of resources, the systemic issues that stifled progress. She articulated how Thompson Innovations' specific projects in renewable energy and efficient resource management offered tangible hope for places like hers. Her answers weren't rehearsed platitudes, but deeply felt convictions, informed by lived experience. She didn't merely recite company goals. She connected them intimately to the very fabric of her own life and the lives of those she cared about. She described how she saw herself contributing, not just as an employee, but as an integral part of a larger, meaningful endeavor. I want to be part of building a future that reaches everyone, not just those already privileged enough to access it, she concluded, her gaze unwavering. Mr. Thompson listened, his expression evolving from detached observation to genuine engagement. He asked about her understanding of their most complex projects, not in terms of abstract theory, but practical implementation. Sarah, drawing on her self-taught knowledge and insatiable curiosity, spoke with clarity and surprising insight, discussing potential improvements, identifying overlooked challenges, and even suggesting novel approaches that had not yet been fully explored internally. She demonstrated not just intelligence, but an acute ability to connect theoretical knowledge with real-world applications, a rare and invaluable trait. You speak with an unusual depth for someone so recently graduated, Miss Miller, he remarked, a faint smile playing on his lips. It's not just the facts, but the understanding behind them. Sir, when you come from a place where every resource is scarce, you learn to see the core value in everything, Sarah explained. You learn to optimize, to innovate with what you have, and to truly understand the impact of waste or inefficiency. That perspective, I believe, is something I can bring to your teams here. She wasn't just intelligent, she was resilient, resourceful, and possessed an innate understanding of scarcity that could translate into unparalleled efficiency and problem-solving in a corporate environment. Her lack of privilege was, in her eyes, not a handicap, but a unique lens through which she viewed the world and its challenges. As Sarah spoke, Mr. Thompson found himself thinking not of the carefully curated resumes that usually graced his desk, but of a different time, a different life. He remembered worn shoes, patched clothing, and the burning desire to prove himself against a world that saw only his humble beginnings. The subtle lines etched around his eyes deepened almost imperceptibly, a silent narrative of battles fought and overcome. He recognized the fire in Sarah's eyes, a reflection of the same inextinguishable drive that had propelled him from a small, struggling textile town to the pinnacle of corporate innovation. He recalled the countless rejections, the doors slammed shut, purely because his background didn't fit the expected mold. Sarah wasn't just answering questions. She was embodying a spirit he knew intimately, a spirit that refused to be defined by circumstances. He saw past the plastic bag, past the simple dress, and recognized a kindred spirit, a fighter with a brilliance that shone brighter precisely because it had been forged in adversity. This wasn't just an interview. It was a connection, an unveiling of shared understanding that transcended generations and social strata. He had seen countless candidates who could quote figures and strategies, but few who could articulate their purpose with such raw conviction and profound understanding of its real-world implications. It was clear that Sarah wasn't just seeking a job. She was seeking a platform to make a difference, and she had meticulously chosen his company as that platform. The plastic bag, once an emblem of her disadvantage, now seemed to whisper a story of unyielding strength and unwavering dedication. The CEO's demeanor softened almost imperceptibly, a subtle shift that only a keen observer would notice, indicating a profound change in the direction of this interview. It was no longer just about evaluating a candidate. It was about recognizing a rare and invaluable human spirit. "Please have a seat, Sarah." Mr. Thompson's voice was deep, resonant, and surprisingly calm, cutting through the palpable tension. He gestured towards a sleek, leather chair opposite his imposing desk. Sarah carefully placed her plastic bag on the floor beside her, ensuring it was tucked away, yet still within reach, a small act of defiance and comfort in this overwhelming environment. She straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. He didn't immediately launch into the typical interview preamble. Instead, his eyes, still sharp and analytical, flickered to the plastic bag, then back to her face, a silent question hanging in the air. The long silence stretched, filled only by the distant hum of the city outside and the rapid beat of Sarah's own heart. Finally he spoke, his voice measured. "Sarah, before we delve into your qualifications and experience, I must confess, I'm intrigued." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. "In all my years of interviewing candidates, I've never seen someone come in with a plastic bag." His tone wasn't accusatory, but rather laced with a genuine, almost academic curiosity. He leaned back slightly in his chair, his gaze unwavering, inviting her explanation. Sarah took a slow, deep breath, preparing herself for the inevitable, yet the directness of his question still surprised her. She had anticipated judgment, but not this almost clinical observation. She decided on absolute honesty, her voice clear and without a trace of apology. "Mr. Thompson," she began, "I understand it's unusual. This bag," she gestured subtly towards it, "holds the only presentable outfit I own, the one I'm wearing now." She continued, her voice gaining a quiet but firm conviction. "I traveled a very long way to be here, overnight, and I wanted to ensure my clothes remained clean and wrinkle-free for this interview. It was the best, and frankly, the only way I had to protect them." Her gaze remained steady, conveying a quiet dignity that belied her humble explanation. "My focus was entirely on the opportunity to be here, to demonstrate my capabilities for your company, not on the superficial aspects of my arrival." A subtle shift occurred in Mr. Thompson's expression. The initial curiosity deepened, morphing into something more akin to recognition, perhaps even a flicker of empathy. He leaned forward slightly, his posture becoming less formal. He hadn't expected such a straightforward, unvarnished truth, devoid of self-pity or embarrassment. Her words resonated with an authenticity that was rare in the polished world he inhabited. He looked at the plastic bag again, but this time his gaze was different. It wasn't just a cheap, worn item. It was a symbol of resourcefulness, determination, and an unrelenting focus on what truly mattered. His mind drifted back, years, even decades. He remembered his own beginnings, The threadbare clothes he wore to his first significant job interview, the countless sacrifices made by his family to send him to a state college, the days he worked 3 jobs just to keep afloat while pursuing his ambition. He hadn't carried a plastic bag, but he understood the essence of her struggle, the sheer lengths one would go to for a glimmer of opportunity. He'd known what it was like to be judged by appearances, to have to work twice as hard to prove his worth in rooms full of people who had been handed everything. Sarah wasn't just a candidate. She was a mirror reflecting a younger, hungrier version of himself, a spirit he recognized all too well. He cleared his throat, a soft sound in the expansive office. "Sarah, your honesty is refreshing." He paused, his eyes still fixed on hers, assessing, evaluating. Many would have tried to invent a more palatable explanation or simply hidden it. You chose transparency. He leaned back again, but this time a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of his lips. And you're right. The superficial aspects often distract from what truly matters. He picked up a pen, tapping it lightly on the desk, his gaze moving from Sarah to the panoramic cityscape outside, then back to her. "We've spoken at length about your skills, your intellect, your passion for this company's mission, all of which are deeply impressive, particularly given your background." He placed the pen down with a decisive click, his eyes now alight with a firm resolution. "But what you've shown me today, Sarah, with that simple, honest explanation about your plastic bag, speaks volumes more than any resume or traditional interview response ever could." Sarah braced herself, unsure whether his words were leading to commendation or a polite dismissal. She held her breath, her hopes flickering precariously. Mr. Thompson straightened in his chair, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that conveyed absolute certainty. "Sarah Miller," he began, his voice firm and clear, cutting through the last vestiges of uncertainty in the room. "I'm not going to put you through any more formal questions. Your journey here, your unwavering focus, your integrity, and your raw determination are precisely the qualities I look for in my team." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, his gaze never leaving her face. "I'm offering you the position, effective immediately." The words hung in the air, a sudden, unexpected symphony in the quiet office. Sarah's eyes widened, a wave of disbelief washing over her, quickly followed by an overwhelming surge of relief and gratitude. The plastic bag, now almost forgotten beside her, bore silent witness to the extraordinary turn of events. The CEO, Mr. Thompson, known for his rigorous standards and sharp intuition, had just extended a life-changing offer, not despite the plastic bag, but perhaps in an unexpected twist, precisely because of it. Sarah's mind reeled, struggling to grasp the reality of Mr. Thompson's words. The sheer weight of the announcement settled upon her, momentarily paralyzing her with a mix of shock and profound joy. A job. The job. Her dream, once so distant and abstract, had materialized into an incredibly tangible offer. Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. A single hot tear traced a path down her cheek, a betraying sign of the immense pressure that had just been lifted from her shoulders. The HR manager, who had been observing the entire interaction with a blend of professional detachment and growing curiosity, now leaned slightly forward, a flicker of genuine astonishment playing across her features. Her initial skepticism, evident in her carefully neutral expression throughout the interview process, began to melt away, replaced by a nascent respect for the young woman before them, and perhaps a renewed appreciation for Mr. Thompson's unconventional methods. Mr. Thompson, ever perceptive, recognized Sarah's stunned silence not as hesitation, but as the processing of an unimaginable shift in her world. He offered a small, knowing smile. "Take your time, Sarah. It's a lot to take in, I understand." He then turned his gaze to the HR manager, Mrs. Albright, who had already begun to compose herself, ready to receive instructions. "Mrs. Albright, please prepare the necessary paperwork. We'll need to expedite the onboarding process. Sarah will start next week." His tone left no room for debate, only efficient execution. "And ensure she receives a comprehensive benefits package. We want her to feel welcome and supported." Mrs. Albright nodded crisply, her earlier reservations completely overshadowed by Mr. Thompson's unwavering confidence. Her eyes, as they met Sarah's, now held a warmth that hadn't been present before. It was the look of someone who had witnessed a pivotal moment, a testament to true merit piercing through superficial layers. Mr. Thompson then addressed Sarah again, his voice softer, more personal. "I know this isn't how most interviews conclude, Sarah, but I saw something in you today that we can't teach in any business school or find on any resume. You have resilience, certainly. You have intellect, undoubtedly. But more than that, you have a pure, unadulterated integrity and a drive born of genuine necessity and ambition. These are the foundations of true leadership and innovation." He paused, leaning forward slightly, his eyes conveying a deep understanding. We often talk about seeking out cultural fit or experience, but what truly propels a company forward is raw potential, unwavering dedication, and the ability to overcome adversity. You arrived here with nothing but hope and determination, carrying your most presentable possession in a plastic bag, and you laid your truth bare. That speaks volumes about your character. It tells me you're not afraid of hard work, that you value opportunity above pretense, and that you understand the true meaning of earning your place. These are the qualities that built this company, and these are the qualities that will continue to build its future. Sarah finally found her voice, though it was still a whisper. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you so much." The words felt inadequate, but they carried the full weight of her gratitude, of years of struggle and dreaming culminating in this one extraordinary moment. She thought of her family, her mother's tired eyes, her father's stoic silence in the face of financial despair, her younger siblings who looked to her with such innocent expectation. This wasn't just a job for her. It was a lifeline for all of them. The weight she had carried for so long, the crushing burden of responsibility, began to dissipate, replaced by a soaring sense of relief and exhilaration. She imagined calling home, sharing the impossible news, the disbelief, then the tears, the collective sigh of relief that would ripple through their small, struggling household. This wasn't just a new beginning for her, but a complete reversal of fortune for an entire family. The plastic bag, which had felt like a brand of shame just hours ago, now seemed like a talisman, a symbol of the struggle that had unexpectedly paved the way for her triumph. It had forced her to be genuine, to stand unvarnished before a man who saw past the veneer of corporate polish. With a final heartfelt nod to Mr. Thompson and a grateful glance towards Mrs. Albright, Sarah rose from her chair, her legs feeling a little wobbly beneath her. Her hand instinctively reached for the plastic bag, which felt lighter now, infused with a new narrative. It no longer represented scarcity, but rather the extraordinary possibility of what could happen when resilience met unexpected understanding. As she made her way out of the opulent office, past the hushed reception area, and towards the gleaming elevators, The world seemed to have shifted on its axis. The same polished floors, the same hushed conversations, the same imposing architecture that had intimidated her just hours earlier now seemed to hum with promise. The plastic bag was still in her hand, but it was no longer just a humble carrier of clothes. It was a vessel of dreams, a silent testament to a journey from hardship to hope, from uncertainty to an undeniable, powerful new beginning. The city outside, once a daunting maze of ambition and unattainable heights, now beckoned with the exhilarating promise of a future she had dared to dream of, and now, miraculously, had the chance to build. The world seemed to spin for Sarah, the weight of 1,000 days of struggle lifting in an instant. She found her voice, a little shaky, but filled with genuine emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thank you so much. I don't know what to say." Her hands, which had been clutching the worn fabric of her dress, now trembled slightly. The HR manager, who had been observing the entire interaction with a blend of professional decorum and underlying skepticism, now wore an expression of genuine astonishment, a subtle nod of respect beginning to form in her eyes as she processed the CEO's decisive move. The air in the opulent office, previously thick with unspoken tension, now hummed with the electrifying energy of possibility. Mr. Thompson offered a rare, warm smile. "No need to say anything, Sarah. Just prove me right." He gestured towards the HR manager. "Ms. Davies will handle all the onboarding paperwork and details. Congratulations, and welcome aboard." With a final reassuring glance, he rose, signaling the end of the meeting. Sarah, still slightly in a daze, managed a deep bow of gratitude before turning to Ms. Davies, who now approached her with a markedly different demeanor. In the weeks and months that followed, Sarah flourished. The initial shock gave way to an unyielding determination to justify Mr. Thompson's faith in her. She absorbed every piece of information, asked insightful questions, and approached every task with an intensity that quickly impressed her colleagues. Her unique perspective, honed by years of overcoming obstacles with limited resources, proved to be an invaluable asset. While others might look for the most expensive or technologically advanced solution, Sarah instinctively sought efficiency, practicality, and innovative ways to achieve results with less. She brought a grounded, real-world understanding to market challenges and customer needs that many of her urban-reared colleagues, accustomed to a life of relative privilege, simply overlooked. Her innate resourcefulness, once a necessity for survival, became her professional superpower. She streamlined processes, identified waste, and proposed creative solutions to long-standing problems. She wasn't afraid to challenge assumptions, respectfully but firmly, and her insights often led to breakthroughs that significantly impacted the company's bottom line. Mr. Thompson, observing her progress from afar, found himself nodding in satisfaction time and again. He had seen raw potential. Now he witnessed it blossom into undeniable talent. Sarah's success at the company wasn't confined to her professional achievements. With her first few paychecks, she immediately began to alleviate the financial burdens on her family. Her mother received the medical attention she desperately needed. Her younger siblings were able to access better educational resources, and the looming threat of losing their modest home finally receded. She instilled hope back into her community, subtly demonstrating through her own example that dreams, however distant, were not impossible. She never forgot where she came from, often returning to visit, sharing her experiences and encouraging other young people to pursue education and opportunity, regardless of their starting point. Years passed, and Sarah's career trajectory continued its meteoric rise. She moved from an entry-level position to a team leader, then to a department head, and eventually to a senior executive role. The plastic bag became a cherished, almost legendary anecdote within the company's history, a powerful reminder of Mr. Thompson's unconventional wisdom and Sarah's extraordinary spirit. She herself would occasionally recount the story, always with a touch of humility and fierce pride, ensuring that its lesson, that true value lies beyond superficial appearances, was never forgotten. One crisp autumn morning, a decade after her fateful interview, Sarah, now impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, stood by her office window, gazing out at the bustling city below. Her office was several floors above Mr. Thompson's original one, testament to her journey. On her desk sat a small, neatly folded plastic bag, not the worn, transparent one she had carried that day, but a replica, a quiet, personal symbol of her past, her foundation, and her unwavering determination. It served not as a reminder of hardship, but of triumph over adversity, a testament to the belief that resilience, integrity, and raw potential could indeed conquer all. She thought of the young woman who had clutched that bag, filled with a mixture of fear and audacious hope, stepping into a world that seemed entirely alien. That girl, armed with nothing but her intelligence and courage, had seized an opportunity and transformed not only her own life but the lives of those she loved. Her story became a beacon, illuminating the profound truth that character, determination, and the courage to pursue one's dreams against all odds are the most valuable assets one can possess. Sarah Miller's journey was more than just a success story. It was a powerful narrative about seeing beyond the superficial, about recognizing the extraordinary spark of humanity beneath the ordinary exterior. It taught that opportunities, when granted with an open mind and a discerning eye, could unleash incredible forces of change. For anyone seeking inspiration, for those who believe in the boundless potential within every individual, for those who understand that true greatness often emerges from the most unexpected places, Sarah's journey stands as an enduring testament. Remember, the next inspiring story awaits, and sometimes the most profound lessons are held within the simplest of packages. Don't miss out on more incredible tales of human spirit and triumph. Subscribe now and join us for the next chapter of unforgettable journeys.